calendar, if we were going to have a static calendar, which is what the Orthodox Christians sort of did, they sort of used a Julian calendar to make sort of a static model of the Hebrew calendar. If you had a static calendar, then September, that's why we have the name September, which comes from the Greek for seventh, would be the seventh month. So it's the Latin word for seven would be the seventh month. September would be the seventh month. October, the eighth month. November, the ninth month. And December, the 10th month. So that's why they have these prefixes beforehand. So they would correspond roughly to a fixed sort of Hebrew calendar. So December would be technically the 10th month, and therefore that would correspond to Tevet. And November would be the 9th month, corresponding to Kislev. And so today is the 25th of November, and would correspond to the 25th of Kislev, which is the first day of Hanukkah. So if you're on a fixed calendar, you'd light your first candle for Hanukkah last night. Now, Noahides don't have to follow the Hebrew calendar. It's not necessary to follow the Hebrew calendar. The only reason you would really follow the Hebrew calendar is if you were living in a Hebrew community somewhere. It's like, for example, living in the state of Israel, where there would be everybody would be keeping the Jewish holidays according to the Hebrew calendar. So it would make sense to observe the Hebrew calendar. But if you're not observing the Hebrew calendar, if you're somewhere else in the world, it would make more sense to follow a calendar which is easy for you to identify the dates on. You don't have to keep on checking for notifications on a non-standard calendar. You'd like to have a date you can put on your calendar, put in your diary, and you'll know exactly when the events are going to occur. So the 25th of the 9th month today would be a day you could put down for a remembrance of Hanukkah, for example, as corresponding to Kislev. And so it really sort of kicks off things, and that's why I wanted to do a recording today about this. Kicks off things as they start to move towards Christmas. Now, what is Christmas for a Jew? I mean, what does it mean to a Jew? Does it mean anything to a Jew? A lot of people will say, of course, it means nothing to Jews. It's completely irrelevant. But in fact, that's not totally true. We have at least three different ways of referring to it in Jewish writings, in Hebrew tradition and in rabbinical tradition. So the earliest and the most sort of ancient way of referring to this time of the year would be Tekufat Tevet, which would be really meaning sort of the winter solstice. So Tekufat Tevet is the darkest time of the year. In the month of Tevet, the darkest days of Tevet, the darkest days of the 10th month, are the days where sort of the year pivots, and so it's called the Tekufat. It's like a pivot of Tevet, when the season has passed through that darkest period of time, that the days start to get longer again in the North Turanian hemisphere. That's when that pivotal time of when it gets darker before it starts to get lighter again. That's called the Tekufat Tevet, and it was not pinpointed to one specific day. It was called the Tekufat of Tevet because it was the pivot of Tevet. Tevet would always be supposed to be around. It would be a lunar month which would surround that period of darkness, that darkest period of the year, and that part of Tevet was called the Tekufat of Tevet. Okay, now you'll notice, as I said, that Tevet this year is coming very late. If the 25th, and this year, for the recording purpose, this is 2024. So in 2024, Tevet is going to actually come on the very last day of the year. It's not going to start until the very last day of the year. Now, that's a long time after the winter solstice. The winter solstice is around the 20th, 21st of the month of December. So how can we call it the Tekufat of Tevet if it's actually happening inside of the month of Kislev, right? This is the pivotal time of Tevet, and yet it's happening this year in the month of Kislev. Well, what's going on here? And the answer is because the calendar that Hebrews use today is a revised calendar created in the 4th century by Hillel II, not the original Hillel, somebody who was hundreds of years later, and this person devised a calendar which is now adopted and used by Jews all over the world. But according to that system, the Tekufat of Tevet was abandoned in favor of a cycle, a 19-year cycle, where you insert a certain number of intercalary months within a 19-year cycle, and it sort of loops back on itself, and it keeps time pretty well within that sort of 19-year cycle. But when that lunar solar cycle was created, the idea of spotting new moons and making sure that the new moon, which occurred before the month of Tevet, or at the beginning of the month of Tevet, was before the winter solstice, that sort of went out the window. That sort of stuff was done when there was a Sanhedrin in operation in Jerusalem with the temple, and all of that was operating when the Jubilee was in place. The Tekufot of Tevet would always take place inside of the month of Tevet, but not anymore. It doesn't happen that way anymore. So that's why this year, the winter solstice will not take place in the month of Tevet, but it's actually going to take place in the month of Kislev instead, because the calendar is not really aligned properly anymore. It just follows a mathematical system. So that's one explanation. And that's one of the words for the Christmas season, if you like. The Tekufat of Tevet is one of the words for it. Now, another word which is used for Christmas is calendar. This is a term which comes up in the Talmud. And calendar is also called the birthday of the king. It's interesting. It's a holiday which is promoted for Noahites, for Messianic Noahites. It is not a holiday which is observed by Jews. It is not regarded as a pagan holiday. It's regarded as a holiday which was established for the glory of God, but that pagans twisted its meaning and made it into a bad thing. So that's another term which is used for the time of year, calendar. And calendar lasts 8 days. So the Roman Catholic Church has something called the Calendar Proclamation, which they read out at midnight mass on Christmas Eve, and that is to announce the calendar sort of time. And this calendar, if the first day of calendar was the 25th of December, then the last day of calendar would be the 1st of January. You've got this octave. It's called an octave. These 8 days from. So if the 25th was a Sunday, the 8th day would also be a Sunday to Sunday, or a Monday to Monday, whatever. It's called an octave. So calendar is an octave holiday, and it's celebrated in that way. And it's supposed to be a celebration which was appointed by Adam Kadmon. Adam Kadmon's supposed to have appointed the calendar celebration. It's a time when to celebrate the fact that the end of the world is not coming. That's basically what it was originally appointed for, according to the Talmud. So that's another one. And it's also called, as I said, the birthday of the king. So, and it's also called the birthday of the sun as well in Bava Batra. But these are passages which are a bit obscure, and people have various different interpretations of what they mean. But you really mustn't read a translation or an interpretive translation without accepting that you're only reading one particular rabbi's interpretation. If you really want to understand it yourself, you have to understand and read and study the Aramaic Talmud itself, as Jews do. That's what it means to be a Jew, to ponder on these things and try and work out what it all means. Not just follow a particular school of thought on interpretation. Anyway, so that's the second name for the Christmas season. And then the third name for the Christmas season is Nittel, which comes from natal. The word natal, as you may know, it refers to giving birth. Like an antenatal clinic is a clinic that women go to before they give birth. Antenatal, before natal. And then you have postnatal care, which means care for women after they've given birth and for babies after they've been born. This is natal. The root word is natal here. And so we call Christmas in Yiddish, that time of the year, is called Nittal, which means natal. It's the same exact word. It's taken from the Latin word natal. So Nittal. And you've got, Nittal is divided in 3 parts, okay? There's Nittel Nacht, which is before Nittel, the darkest nights of the year. That's the Tekufat Tevet. There's Nittel Katan, which is calendar. And then at the end of calendar, after calendar, you have Nittel Gadol, which is the day that Jews are halakhically advised to give presents on Nittel Gadol, not to give presents on the 8th day of Nitl Katan, but to give presents either before the 8th day, on the 7th day of Nitl Katan, or to give presents preferably on Nitl Gadol, the day after calendar. And that is the halakhic. That's a halakhic fact. That's actually halakhic guidance given to us. We give presents to our Christian friends on Nitl Gadol. That's the day after the 8th day of calendar. So, so if anybody else says to you that the Jews don't have a concept of Christmas or it's not important, well, you can tell them from this channel they're totally wrong. There very much is, and there's even halakha concerning when to give presents, when Jews should give presents to our non-Jewish friends. Sorry, our non-Jewish friends, our Christian friends specifically.